Chapter 23, 1/10. Tom spent what felt like an eternity learning to read Zara's common tongue. He discovered there were other minor languages, but in every major metropolis of the world, Karen was spoken. Karen, which literally meant gift of Ka, was the first blessing granted by the deity to the inhabitants of Zara. Fortunately, the learning process was easier than picking up a foreign language back on Earth. Thomas somehow already grasped the structure of Karine's grammar, so all he needed was to recognize the symbols and commit them to memory. Having a tutor certainly helped. The person teaching him was named Joseph Carr, and through him, Tom learned that this was merely his social name. Among Zaririans, it was normal not to reveal one's family name to non-intimates. After about 4 hours of lessons, the teacher paused and suggested the boy take a break to stretch his legs. He'd be waiting for him back in the classroom once he'd had a quick snack. The apprentice mage didn't feel hungry, but he could eat something. Taking advantage of his free time, he left the room in search of a place to grab a bite. Reaching the center of the hall, he realized that, not only did he have no idea where to go, he also didn't have any money to buy food. In a place this big, there had to be some kind of map or reception desk to help. And indeed there was. Near the entrance stood a large table with a Zaririan stationed behind it. Probably what he was looking for. The light streaming in from outside was intense. It was a bright day, and sunlight flooded the entrance. It was so bright, in fact, that it became difficult to see who was entering or leaving the building. Yet, an imposing entourage made itself known, even amid the blinding light. About 10 people walked in synchronized rows of 3. All wore attire similar to the garments of Lullaby's attendants, though in a different color. A tall and slender figure drew attention, walking at the center of the procession. It was Dishkar. Of course, Tom didn't know who she was at that moment, but it was impossible not to notice her, even in the glare and flanked by large, imposing people. She stood out with her height and grace. Thomas stared, spellbound by her exotic nature and by how much she resembled the deity Ka. Dish didn't pay him any mind, or perhaps didn't even notice him, as she walked calmly toward the Parliament building located behind the residence, connected via the hall. Still, she felt something strange, something very familiar yet long forgotten. That strange pull only held him for a moment before he decided to resume his quest for food. But he barely took a step when he realized Dishkar had indeed noticed him and was walking straight toward him. There was no one else nearby, so whatever she had to say, it was surely meant for him. The emissary approached with all her grace, greeting him with a wide smile and a slight bow of her head. "My dear friend Marifa, what a joy it is to see you again in my city." Tom recognized the name. It was the name of the mage. "I'm sorry, but aren't you mistaking me for someone else?" he asked, trying to be as respectful as possible. From the little he had seen of Lullaby, he knew it was best not to mess up. "I apologize, but I'm certain I know you. And you recognize the name of my friend, don't you?" Those imposing yellow eyes made him so uncomfortable he couldn't even think of lying. "Yes, I recognize the name." Dish smiled again and motioned for everyone around her to step away. "What is the name of your world?" she asked abruptly, brimming with curiosity like a dog drooling for a treat. "I come from Earth." His answer left her visibly puzzled. "Earth? Like the ground where we plant things?" "Yeah, it is kind of a weird name," he replied awkwardly. Before being pulled into Zara, he had never really thought about how plain the name of his planet was. Maybe he should have called it something like Republic of Humanity, but not all countries on Earth were republics. He'd think of something better. "And what about your deity? What are the deities of Earth like?" Clearly, this wasn't Dish's first time asking these kinds of questions. "Well, there aren't any deities on Earth." Now she seemed genuinely surprised, something she didn't think was possible. "Are you sure? How are the arts practiced?" She rolled her eyes like a seasoned investigator. "They aren't." She looked even more shocked. "We don't have magic." What we have is science. And when we talk about art, we mean literature, painting, things like that. Fascinating. She stepped closer. From what I can tell, you still don't have your old memories, correct? Thomas felt a bit uneasy but kept a straight face. I'm me. Marifa is Marifa, he said, clearly fed up. He had tried to avoid this, but it hadn't worked. I see. Would you allow me to speak with my friend for a while? You should return to your original world in the meantime. That was exactly what he wanted, to wake up back on Earth and make sure everyone was okay. After all, there'd always be another night to spend in Zara. Sure, but I don't know how to do that. Leave it to me. Dish extended an arm and touched his forehead. After that, he felt nothing, saw nothing, heard nothing. Tomas was completely devoid of any sense. His mind had left Zara, but it wasn't in Earth either. The total absence of senses didn't bother him. It was different but not unpleasant. Slowly, he began to feel something under his foot, like stepping on a small stone. He was beginning to feel a body again, though it wasn't his, nor the golems from Zara. It was something else entirely. Thomas finally realized he could see again. The place was pitch dark, a room made of massive stone blocks. It was small without windows or furniture and had only a single exit, an open doorway straight ahead. He tried to walk toward it, but his first step proved more difficult than expected. His new body was heavy and sluggish to respond. It felt like moving underwater. He exerted too much effort to accomplish too little. Tom was lagged. Despite all the effort, he couldn't hear a thing. It was unnaturally quiet. When he finally passed through the threshold, he understood where he was. This time, the boy hadn't been sent to some dark world, or even a magical one. In truth, he hadn't been sent to any world at all. He found himself at the same castle he'd seen while drifting through space in that strange silver armchair. The castle of the mage who wanders the cosmos. The room where he awoke was outside the main structure, near the entrance. As he looked at the towering spires and structures of the palace, he felt like an ant. The place was colossal. He didn't remember it being that massive when he saw it before. Still struggling with his new body, he walked through the golden garden. The white stone floor was polished and crisscrossed with golden guides, forming intricate paths and patterns that beautified the walkways. Nothing here seemed natural. Everything followed a strict aesthetic, probably Marifar's aesthetic. Even the golden trees had branches arranged in patterns that complemented the palace architecture, each one nearly identical, but just varied enough to create a fan-like effect when viewed as a whole. This garden represented something beyond what the boy could grasp, but he felt the weight of that truth in his chest. As he admired the beauty of the exotic golden trees, something caught his attention in the distance. Near the edge of the terrain, something was glowing. He knew he wouldn't return here after entering the castle, if not for lack of time, then certainly for lack of motivation. So he decided to check it out now. His body moved toward the glimmer with a mechanical rhythm. Walking in that golem was still bizarre. To distract himself from the discomfort, he turned his gaze to the source of light illuminating the castle. Far off in the void, he saw a white dwarf star, a stark contrast to the sun. Its light was cold, pale, and somber. For those unfamiliar with astronomy, a white dwarf isn't a tiny glowing woman. It's a star in the final stage of its life. After a short walk, Tom reached the very edge of the spaceborne terrain. At the end of the stone path that led to the entrance, he found the source of the mysterious glow. There, at the threshold between stone and the cosmos, sat a silver chair. It was made of metal, adorned with intricate designs on the arms and back. He noticed engravings etched into its surface. Texts, perhaps not just decoration. Some parts were inlaid with gemstones, elevating the furniture to a level of lavishness. Wasting no opportunity, he sat in the elegant chair. His excitement made it clear he expected something to happen, but nothing did. The chair was just comfortable, and not even that much. Maybe it was related to the silver couch he'd found at the start of this journey. Just a guess. There was no way to know. He eventually gave up on the garden and continued toward the castle, now more accustomed to his new body. The massive palace doors slid open like ice melting. No resistance, no sound. Judging by their size, Tom thought opening them would be a struggle, but it wasn't. Maybe it was because of being in space, or the strength of this body. As soon as he stepped into the grand hall, the space lit up. Dozens of chandeliers floated above, bringing life to the room. The light drifted aimlessly through the enormous chamber, rising and falling as if guided by a breeze that didn't exist. The great hall stretched as high as a 10-story building, with no internal structures beyond the walls themselves. In the center stood 10 large objects, each about 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide, all covered with cloth. There were also doors leading to other parts of the castle. And that was it. A complete waste of space. Why did Marifa have this obsession with grandeur? This could have been the Beanstalk Giant's castle, but it wasn't. Tom walked toward the covered structures. In front of them stood a small table with a folded piece of paper on it. The furniture looked familiar, though he couldn't recall where or when he'd seen something like it. He picked up the paper and began unfolding it. For the first time, he really took notice of his body. His consciousness wasn't inhabiting a golem like the ones in Zara. This one was a machine made of polished stone, metal, and wood. His fingers, slender and elegant, were sculpted from marble. Delicate, decorated gears made his joints move. His entire body bore ornate details, clearly designed for aesthetics rather than utility. This golem hadn't been modelled after any living creature. It was a work of art, more than anything else. And, fortunately, Thomas no longer found it strange to be inside it. After admiring the body he now occupied, Tom unfolded the paper. On it was a simple sketch of the hall, the small table, and the 10 covered structures. A single arrow pointed toward one of them, the first from right to left. He placed the paper back on the table and, curious, walked over to the indicated structure. Up close, the objects looked like giant framed paintings covered with blue fabric. The cloth shimmered as he stepped closer, sparkling with every movement. Anxious, he removed the cover, revealing the painting he had expected. Because of the sheer size of the canvas, he had to take several steps back to take it all in properly. The painting depicted a child of a species unknown to him. He was certain it was a child, cradled in someone's arms. Probably a little boy, purple-skinned with huge green eyes. No hair on his head, just a pair of small horns, pointed ears, and a thin mouth. His clothes followed a consistent visual style, unlike those of Earth, but still somewhat familiar. A kind of onesie that bundled his legs together. A long, thin tail, devilish in shape, was prominently featured in the scene. The child held the arrow-shaped tip in both chubby hands. That detail made Thomas chuckle quietly. Playing with his own tail, he thought. Not much of the adult holding the child could be seen. The focus was clearly not on them, just enough of their form to confirm that the infant was nestled in their lap. As he stared at the massive painting, images from the scene began to flash through his mind. At first, they were blurry and distant, like fragments of a dream. Then they sharpened, disjointed flashes of events, strange voices, bizarre smells, and conflicting emotions. It was like a bucket of water to the face, except the water was memories. Of all that mental chaos, one thing stood out clearly. A face. Somehow, he recognized the person holding the child. That realization flung open the gates, and more confusing, tangled memories came flooding in. In that moment, the old Thomas ceased to exist. He was hit with waves of recollection, memories not his own. He saw himself running, playing, chanting spells, laughing. He also saw himself dying. And when the B-52s faded from the sky, Those memories became his. He stood there for a long while, at first stunned by the flood of information forced into his already fragile mind, then trying to make sense of it all. This had been the first reincarnation of Marifa. So, this is how he would remember the lives of the mage. The life that triggered the memory might have been the shortest one Marifa ever lived. Tom couldn't recall that life the way he did his own, but he knew its story, felt it, even if he didn't know how to access the details. Now fully aware that he was no longer the same, he turned toward the other covered frames. Should he unveil them now? Unfortunately, that idea didn't get far. Slowly, he began to hear familiar voices, his friends arguing far in the distance. The vision of the paintings blurred, then faded completely. A sharp pain pierced through him, driving every thought of other lives out of his head.